We live in an era where problems are rampant, and complaints about one's own country and environment are common, reflecting a fundamental sentiment of our times. And these problems are often very challenging to resolve. In light of this, perhaps we need a fresh perspective that views domestic problems not just as internal issues. Take the cases of Myanmar. Can its military regime find resolution solely from within its own borders? If China and India don't cut off their aid to Myanmar military government, especially China, and if the ASEAN countries don't apply greater pressure and unite it fully, I doubt the issue in Myanmar can be resolved. The same goes for North Korea. Is the problem just between the North and the South? Is the South China Sea dispute only a problem for the Philippines? Have Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia fully collaborated with the Philippines on this issue? And it's no different for China too. Many Chinese people have lost all their hope for internal change. But consider this. If the environment around China changes, for instance, if China's authoritarian allies in Asia were all changes, could Chinese political and geopolitical isolation lead to greater possibility for change within this country? So, to every citizen in Asia, whether you are facing a domestic or transnational problem, solution might well depend on a deeper understanding of other Asian countries and international relations. That's why we are launching this new channel. Hello and welcome to the first episode of our channel. Today, I will introduce the purpose of this channel and provide some basic knowledge to give you an overview. We aim to offer a new perspective to understand better the event occurring in our own country and across East and South Asia, offering some fresh insights. Understanding a country is complex and the region even more, with countless pieces of knowledge and clues. We won't cover everything, but we focus on a special angle: the building of republican politics. We hypothesize that a growth of republican system in every country in this region could potentially aid in resolving many of its problems. Macro-political or purely economical analysis can be overwhelming, leaving the viewers only wondering what really can be practically done. However, if we focus on building a republican system within each country, it ties back to civil society, something most people can reflect upon and contribute to. Even in countries like China, Vietnam, and Cambodia, where democratic electoral systems are absent, establishing a civil society is not fully impossible. This time, we hope to extend our focus beyond the condition of republican system domestically, to include those all countries in this region, and especially their interrelations. In this channel, we've been focusing on 14 countries. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with our flags. These 14 nations encompass the major political bodies of East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. 9 are members of ASEAN: Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Singapore. The other 5 are China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. You might wonder why Brunei and ASEAN nations isn't included. That's because compared to others, Brunei is relatively small. And why Sri Lanka and Nepal from the South Asian region includes despite their significant populations along with Bangladesh and Pakistan. We want to avoid spreading our analysis too thin, focusing more on Southeast Asia as a nexus, while examining the impacts in Northeast and South Asia, with India as our core interest in the South. As for North Korea's absence, given our channel's theme on the growth of republican bodies, North Korea isn't really part of this conversation yet, and Hong Kong, although it often stands as an independent political entity separate from mainland China in many international indices. But recent developments show a deepening influence from China, making it less distinct, particularly in terms of republican structure and policies toward the others. And yes, we included Taiwan. I anticipate some objections, especially from our Chinese audiences, accusing us of violating the anti-separation law. But embracing a transnational perspective, it might be beneficial to acknowledge that a strong reactions stem solely only from China, from its rigid political correctness, while others in the region accept Taiwan's distinct identity as a given fact. This acceptance and dialogue are integral aspects of a republican system. We aim to maintain an international outlook without making the scope too vast. Our future episode will revolve around these 14 countries and their interrelations. Now, let's illustrate how a country's domestic issues are interconnected with others. For instance, if Malaysia seeks to curb domestic Muslim extremists, the autonomy of Muslim communities in provinces bordering Thailand becomes highly relevant. Just recently, Thailand and Malaysia aim to transform their conflict-ridden border area into an economic trade zone. But without addressing the political and developmental demands of local Muslim populations, such a move might backfire. From here, we can look at the internal republican issue of Thailand and Malaysia, which are actually closely related. Likewise, resolving the South China Sea dispute between the Philippines and China and the issues in Myanmar requires attention of other countries and groups in the region. Recent large-scale human trafficking and telephone scams in Cambodia and Myanmar have raised alarms. Progress in the republican system is crucial to prevent them to become black holes of crime in the region. And transnational crime and interest groups whose mainly roots are in China should no longer use these two allies as their basis. Environmental protection is another area, illustrated by the long-standing issue of cross-border pollution among Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, exacerbated by seasonal winds and ocean currents. The recent haze drifting from Indonesia caused significant harm to Malaysia and Singapore, underlying the direct impacts of Indonesia's legislation and agricultural development on its neighbors. China's influence in the region is monumental and cannot be overlooked. While negative perceptions of China are evident in public opinions across the region, governments are still strive to maintain strong relationship with China, even for South Korea, which has had a significant dispute with China in recent years, still emphasize its friendship with China while strengthening its alliance with US and Japan. China's massive market and its contribution to this country's GDP cannot be ignored. The chart shows a clear relationship between each country's GDP and exports to China. For instance, nearly 1/5 of Malaysia's GDP comes from its export to China. This can explain why the Anwar administration is somewhat hesitant about Belt and Road Initiative with China, yet links closely into China's need for de-dollarization and foreign trade such topic. Taiwan's export to China makes up 80.89% of its GDP, South Korea's 12.25%, and Singapore's around 10%. This economic tether makes adopting a firm stance against China difficult. For example, in Taiwan, we can see even under current background, many people in the group on this island still maintain an appeasement and close attitudes towards China. Even for Thailand and Indonesia, where the proportion isn't as high as others, it's still substantial. More than 5% of the GDP stems from Chinese market. leading to a cautious and ambivalent stance towards China. In contrast, the Philippines and India, Japan are among the nations making a tougher stance, reflecting their lesser economic dependence on China. These economic ties significantly influence the relationship each country in this region has with China. Diversification of supply chain and markets and de-risking from China are pivotal issues here, intertwined with economic fluidity, effective sustainable governance, and republican political structures. But now, I hope it's evident that I'm aiming to explore not only domestic issues but also the intricacies of international relations. It requires a loftier viewpoint and a higher level of engagement from our audience. It's necessary to stepping back from intense domestic conflict to scrutinize the less familiar dynamics of inter-country interactions. But if stubborn domestic issues persist, adopting such a perspective might prove to be invaluable. This channel operates under the basic assumption that if every nation in the region can foster a robust republican political system, many persistent issues could be resolved. Why the emphasis on republican system rather than democracy, which is more commonly discussed? They are distinctly different concepts, and it's crucial not to confuse them with political parties named after them, especially in the United States, the Republican Party and Democratic Party. What they do has nothing to do with these conceptions. Here, I offer some terminology to delineate their nuances. Democracy often aligns with concepts like electoral system, majority rules, abstract political rights, and decision-making. In contrast, republicanism links more towards power limitation, rule of law, representation of diverse groups, compromise, and establishment. Democracy can be viewed as a mechanism for making legitimate decisions under the banner of popular sovereignty. Republicanism, on the other hand, is about mediating contradictions and differences in diverse societies, aiming for coexistence. While democracy seeks universal decision within a political entity, republicanism navigates everyday life and political establishment where all viewpoints need mediation. In today's world, particularly in populous countries, democratic politics often veer towards populism. For example, Thailand's Futai Party epitomized populism in a democratic context, a scenario hardly compatible with the conception of republicanism. The distinction underscores the differences between democracy and republicanism, with our channel emphasizing the latter. We've already shared examples illustrating the intricate interconnections among countries in the region. Now, let's look at some instances that spotlight how republican politics in these nations influence one another. Take for examples, Chinese Premier Li Qiang made a proposal at this year's ASEAN Summit, that is to train over 10,000 officials in the ASEAN region, grounded only in Chinese political governance philosophies. It's a potentially alarming move, highlighting China's propensity to export its government's ideology all over this region. Another case is Vietnam's participation in the CPTPP. Like China, Vietnam is governed by a single communist party, but its CPTPP involvement means it will gradually introduce independent labor unions domestically. That's a stark contrast to China, where such a move is currently inconceivable. We previously mentioned the influence of the situation of Muslim community in the southern Thailand on Malaysia. The progress of Thailand's own republican politics is crucial here. The Move Forward Party, which made significant strides in the recent elections, advocates for a decentralized government, empowering local administrations with more autonomy, a move expected to directly benefit the resolution of issues related to minority, ethnic groups, and regions. It can be seen that the development of Thailand's own republican politics had an impact not only on itself, but also on Malaysia. These examples underline key themes in republican politics, like government governance, regional cooperation, independent labor unions, and central-local relationships. Improved republican politics not only benefit the citizen of a country, but can positively influence neighboring nations, and in turn, reciprocates positive effects. This underscores the importance of looking beyond our own nation's confines and considering the political landscape of our neighbors. Especially in nations like Myanmar, China, Laos, and Cambodia, where civil society is not utterly suppressed, but its role is severely restricted, making active participation in national political progress challenging. So, for citizens of these countries, focusing on the republican status of neighboring nations can be a more viable approach. That's especially for our Taiwanese audiences. A more robust republican system in China would naturally enhance Taiwan's security. The development of better republican governance in China's allies and semi-allies like Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam can in turn prompt republican development in China too, especially for those hoping for India's rise to counterbalance China in this region. A well-established Indian republican system is essential for a stable realization of this goal. By now, the objective of our channel should be more evident. To enhance our audience's understanding of a republican system and the condition of these 14 countries, today's episode will briefly introduce these two directions. We'll reference various indices related to republican politics, excluding directly indicators like human rights condition or happiness index. Let's begin with a fundamental topic related to the republican system, like the separation of power within the country, like the three branches of government, the level and efficiency of government governance, social mobility supported by educational and job opportunities and economical development, social inclusiveness, indicating whether different ethnic groups are adequately represented in political lives, in relationship between the central and local governments, the rule of law and civil society. These elements are all intricately linked to the establishing and functioning a republican system. Alright, let's dive a bit deeper into these 14 countries, breaking down some key factors like GDP, population, and per capita GDP. Now, don't be too shocked to find China's GDP towering over the rest, including Japan, which sits in a distant second place. Then there's India and Indonesia making significant strides, with the latter outpacing Taiwan on an economic scale. You might want to take a moment to absorb all that. Pause the video and take a look at the chart if you need to. Let's move on to government structure. It's a mixed bag. We've got monarchies, parliamentary and presidential systems, and even a handful of countries under the tight grip of a single party. The monarchy club includes Japan, which operates under a constitutional system where the parliament holds the real power. And Malaysia, another monarchy, is a different beast altogether. It operates under a federal system, and here's the twist: the king is elected, not nature born into the role. Its national monarch is elected from 9 of the 13 states, whereas hereditary monarchy, which makes a Malaysian monarch closely related to local politics. This structure fosters a more decentralized power balance compared to Japan. Thailand had its own flavor of monarchy, rooted in a century-long history of constitutional monarch, which is the longest in this region. But, it's a very big but, the king still holds substantial power, making the political landscape quite complex in Thailand. Cambodia, on paper, is a constitutional monarch, but in reality, the king has been sidelined, and the country resembles the single-party system of China, Laos, and Vietnam. Speaking of which, these three socialist republics, each led by a single party, aren't carbon copies of each other. They've got their own nuances, and we'll be peeling back those layers in future discussions. Now, let's pivot to the other non-monarchies. We're looking at countries with parliamentary system like India, Singapore, and Myanmar, where the legislature is the star of the show. There are also presidential systems like Indonesia, South Korea, and the Philippines, where the president calls the shot. Taiwan combines elements of both, branding itself as a semi-presidential republic. The president is responsible for foreign and military affairs, while the focus of domestic affairs still belongs to the legislative powers. Although Myanmar is a parliamentary country, it is still in the midst of a coup and is a dictatorial military government. These structural choices aren't just political jargon. They have real-life implications. Think about the central-local power dynamics. In single-party states like China, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, the central government keeps a tight leash on local administrations. On the flip side, federal systems like those in Malaysia and India, or the semi-federal structure in Indonesia, give more wiggle room to local governments. This autonomy can breathe life into civil society and offer alternative paths of development. In Thailand, at least the Move Forward Party is hoping that Thailand will move towards a more politically pluralistic and decentralized structure. Even in advanced parliamentary democracies like Japan and Taiwan, local administrations enjoy a good degree of autonomy, and this localized power structure is crucial for citizen participation in governance. But take Hong Kong as the opposite instance. After coming under China's influence, its vibrant local councils withered, leading to a stifling of grassroots society. So you see, while these concepts might seem lofty, they're actually deeply intertwined with everyday life, shaping the civic space, political participations, and even the development trajectory of nations. Let's move on to a specific aspect, the parliamentary structure of these countries. Generally, parliaments are organized into either a bicameral, that means two-chamber system, like the US, that has House of Representatives and the Senate, of a unicameral, that means one-chamber system. Of the 14 countries we are discussing, 8 have bicameral system: Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, Cambodia, India, and Myanmar. The other 6, including Singapore, Taiwan, China, Vietnam, Laos, and South Korea, operates with the unicameral system. Notably, China's single-chamber legislative body doesn't really hold any legislative power. Although many reform-minded individuals in China believe enhancing the real power of the National People's Congress is a step towards building a republican system in China. It's a common misconception that bicameral systems are exclusively to monarchies needing both an aristocratic and a commoner's house. Countries like US and India, which are not monarchies, also employ a two-chamber system. From a republican perspective, bicameralism introduces additional checks and balances. One house might represent local interest while others is party-based. One might directly elected and the other indirectly. It opens up more strategic possibility in the domestic political arena, but also could lead to increased bureaucracy and efficiency issues. Another key aspect of a well-functioning republican system is smooth alternation of political parties in power. Aside from single-party states like China, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, many countries in this region experience regular, peaceful transition of power. Taiwan has entered a stable, legitimate replacement cycle since Chen Shui-bian led the Democratic Progressive Party to power in 2000. And in 2016, the Democratic Progressive Party once again complete replacement of the Kuomintang. Indonesia marked a new order of governance in 1999 and experienced another peaceful transition in 2014. South Korea first witnesses a peaceful transition in 1998, marking a very key milestone in its democratization process. Malaysia, too, saw its first peaceful transition in 2018 after 60 years. Aside from single-party state, the exception is Singapore, which never had the ordination of governing party. Given its small size and unique characteristic, Singapore's political situation is a bit distinct, and it doesn't rank highly in terms of democratic politics and freedom. Two countries that stumbled in the political transition are Myanmar and Thailand, both experiencing military coup in the past 5 years. While Thailand has a newly elected government, it has yet to fully emerge from the shadows of the coup. A successful constitutional referendum later this year could change that. I very much hope that to a success. It can be seen that stable party rotation is indeed a severe challenge in the Republican government. Among them, India deserves special attention. Although there have been many experiences of political party rotation in their history, the party led by Modi currently also has a tendency to exercise authoritarian rules in India, and has begun to use authoritarian government to suppress major opposition parties. This is also a very disturbing fact. Let's start by comparing the status of republics in this country. We can refer to the World Bank's ranking on government effectiveness, control of corruption, political stability, and regulatory quality to get a better sense of the governance landscape. It's clear that Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea are leading the pack, while Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and the Philippines are lagging behind, with the Philippines outperforming Vietnam and China in many areas. If we focus on the overall ranking, the top 5 are Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and Malaysia. The bottom 5 are Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and China. China ranks relatively high in terms of control of the corruption and government effectiveness, but falls short in political stability and quality of governance. My experience as a Chinese aligns with its findings. Something's good, something's bad, including the rule of laws and various freedom, are still very wanting in this place. We've got a few more metrics to help sketch a fuller picture of these nations. The distance between flags in the following graphs represent the disparity in score. The first graph, from the World Justice Project, displays rule of law indices. Japan, Singapore, and South Korea lead the pack here, though unfortunately, Taiwan and Laos are unrepresented, likely due to political considerations. Next, we can look at social mobilities. The stagnation of social mobility is something that all countries complain about. Although the global mobility situation may not be satisfactory, the differences between countries are still quite huge. India's low ranking might not be a shock, while China fares better. Despite its poor human rights and domestic freedom records, China's opportunity in education and civil services examinations coped with its rapid economic growth, maintained a certain level of social mobility, perhaps a stabilizing factor under very strict governance. This social mobility index is provided by the World Economic Forum. The third metric, a democracy index from The Economist, indicates that the lower score corresponded to higher level of democracy. Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, and India are ahead, with Myanmar, Laos, China, Vietnam, and Cambodia at the bottom. A point of intrigue: why does Cambodia fare better than China and Vietnam? Last, we can examine internet freedom. In today's world, the internet is a pivotal public infrastructure and an integral part of a republican system. Taiwan, Japan, South Korea also lead again, with China at the bottom, a reflection of its substance investment in internet control. Leading nations in this matrix are all about Taiwan, Japanese, South Korea, and China, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos trailing. I think what really deserves attention is the group of middle-income countries in the middle segment. Like, why does Malaysia rank first among middle-income countries in every indicators? Why is Vietnam stronger than Thailand and Indonesia in social mobility indicators? And what is the problem for Philippines, which ranks high on every freedom indicator but lags behind on other indicators? There's a lot in this middle section that deserves a closer look. Of course, these metrics, collated by think tanks and research institutions, cannot fully capture the lived experiences of this country's citizens. They are, however, a good starting point for our discussion. In the future, this channel will of course conduct detailed analysis based on more detailed data and more detailed actual examples. So, over the next several months, we aim to deepen your understanding of this region. While you might be well acquainted with your own country, there's likely much to learn about other 13s. Our content will focus on 4 areas. First, the theories and knowledge surrounding Republican system. Second, a comparative analysis of political and administrative system within this region based on a political science. Third, a summary and focus on key elections and the legislative process, intertwined with news updates. And fourth, an exploration of regional economic and trade multinational organizations and frameworks, and their impact on individual countries, like RECP, led by ASEAN, and CPTPP, led by Japan, and examples of frameworks we dive into, maybe alongside with ASEAN itself. So that's all for today. We hope it helped you grasp the basic understanding of these countries in this region, their interactions with one another, and the state of the republican system. If you found this channel insightful, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe and recommend it to a friend, especially those who living in this region or those who interested in these topics. We believe this is going to be an engaging channel. Initially, we'll be updating every 2 weeks, though we are aiming to increase the frequency of our post. Since I'm running this channel independently and juggling a variety of contents, but mostly in Chinese unfortunately, this is my first foray into creating content entirely in English. I'm considering producing more English content in future. And your support would mean a lot. You can find a link to sponsor my content on the screen. Every contribution is greatly appreciated. In our next episode, we plan to provide a roundup of significant elections that took place in 2023 across its 14 countries and discuss the impacts they've had. Stay tuned and thank you for your support. See you next time, and hopefully see you in a better republic in Asia.